Let's talk about that one thing that every Portuguese learner struggles with: translating in your head. If you've ever frozen mid-sentence because you're mentally converting English to Portuguese word for word, well, you are not alone. And I have to be honest, stopping that isn't going to happen in the first month or even in the first few months. In fact, expecting not to translate when you are just starting out really is like expecting to run before you can walk. But that doesn't mean that you're going to be stuck doing it forever. So in this video, I'm going to show you why your brain does this, what actually works to reduce mental translation over time, and give you some realistic strategies that meet you exactly where you are at. If we haven't met before, seja bem-vindo ao canal. My name is Liz and I help English speakers who are relocating or retiring to Portugal go from saying their very first words up to having their first conversations with native speakers. And today we're diving into the mental translation trap, but here's what's different about this video. I'm not going to tell you to just stop translating. It's not realistic, and that's not really how language learning actually works. So instead, I'm going to show you how to translate faster and smarter and eventually less using 3 science-backed techniques that respect where you're at in your learning journey. If you're just getting started out and you need some help with the absolute fundamentals, pronunciation, essential grammar, and how to understand real-life Portuguese speech, I do have a free 60-minute lesson for beginners that will set you up for success. The link is in the description, and I promise it's the best hour you will spend on your Portuguese journey. So let's talk about what's really happening when you translate. You hear Portuguese, your brain converts it to English, you process the meaning, you formulate a response in English, and then you translate that response back into Portuguese, and then you speak. That is 5 steps just to say one thing. So it's no wonder that there are awkward pauses in your conversations. But here's the thing you need to understand. Your brain is just trying to be efficient. It's relying on your dominant language, which is English, as a framework to access the new one. This is completely normal and not a sign that you are doing anything wrong. I want you to think of it instead as a temporary bridge. Every language learner goes through this phase because every time you learn a new word or phrase, your brain creates a tiny pathway between neurons. We actually talked about this in my video on brain science, where I explained how these neural pathways actually work. I'm going to link that in the description. So right now your brain has built a pathway that goes Portuguese, English meaning, and that pathway is going to be there for a while. But the good news is, with consistent practice using the right techniques, you'll start building a new direct pathway that goes from Portuguese to meaning with no English middleman required. So here's the mindset shift that I want you to make. The goal isn't to stop translating overnight, it's to translate faster and smarter and eventually less. Track your progress by how quickly you can switch between languages, not whether you can translate at all. So how do we build that direct pathway? Let me share 3 really helpful techniques. The first technique is the chunk method, and this is about training your brain to work with complete sentences instead of individual words. So stop learning Portuguese word by word, start learning it in chunks that are complete expressions, okay? So for example, don't just learn posso, can I, and ajudar, to help. Instead, learn posso ajudar as one thing. That's a single chunk, a complete thought. You don't have to think about the individual words. Some more examples could be está bem, sem problema, vou ao mercado. These are complete units of meaning, not words that have to be assembled piece by piece. So this really works because when you learn phrases like this, you can bypass that word for word translation bottleneck. Your brain is going to start pulling these out as complete thoughts automatically in conversation. So here's what I want you to do after this video, a little task for you. Start narrating your daily routine out loud in Portuguese using complete chunks. So for example, estou a fazer café. I'm going to make coffee. Vou sair agora. I'm going to go out now. Tenho que levar o lixo. I have to take out the rubbish. So you can start with your morning or your evening routine where vocabulary stays predictable. And this is really going to build muscle memory for these phrases so that they become automatic. Then over time, your brain will store more and more of these chunks, and you'll find yourself pulling them out in conversation without even thinking. The second technique is about input, and this is based on research from a linguist called Stephen Krashen. I have covered his work in my videos before. So in his input hypothesis, he says that comprehensible input is the key to language acquisition. In other words, you need a massive amount of listening and reading before you can expect fluent output. So here's the catch though, that input needs to be just above your current level of understanding. So about 60 to 70% comprehensible. Not so easy that you understand everything, but not so hard that you are completely lost. So here's the problem. Most learners try to speak before they've had enough input. They're trying to find the output language, but they haven't absorbed it properly yet. So here's another method for you to practice. I want you to find native audio or video, ideally content at your level, and then I want you to hit pause after a sentence and repeat it out loud without translating it first. Don't think about what it means, just let the sound and the rhythm flow so that you can keep repeating. This does two powerful things. It builds muscle memory for Portuguese rhythm and intonation, but it's also training your brain to process Portuguese directly without that detour into English. So as I explained in the video on understanding fast Portuguese, European Portuguese is a stress-timed language, just like English. So we stress syllables at regular intervals and reduce the rest of the sounds, which is why you can't hear some of the syllables sometimes. So when you hear como é que te chamas instead of como é que te chamas, you're hearing the natural rhythm of Portuguese. And if you can expose yourself to this more and more, the more your brain is going to start to recognize these patterns automatically. I'm going to link that video in the description so you can watch that next. And if you do want to sound more natural when you're speaking Portuguese, I have created a free pronunciation guide with native speaker audio examples. Just comment pronunciation below and I will send you the link. This guide is really going to help you nail those tricky Portuguese sounds and train your ear to recognize the natural rhythm of Portuguese as we were just talking about it. The third technique to reduce the amount of translation you are doing in your head is emotional association. Now, this works because emotions bypass the logical part of your brain. So here is what I mean. Instead of just learning that obrigado means thank you, I want you to feel the gratitude when you say obrigado, because this will help you link the emotion directly to the Portuguese word with no English in between. So, for example, when you stub your toe, don't think ow anymore. You can just think ai. You can feel the pain with the Portuguese word. When something tastes delicious, link that pleasure that you are feeling directly to que delícia, for example. Or when you're feeling really frustrated, you can let que chatice be the first thing that comes out naturally. It might feel a bit of a strange one, but this is actually how children learn languages. They associate words with feelings and experiences. They're not doing any translations. One of my students, Laurie, had a brilliant breakthrough with this. She was asked to give her NIF number over the phone in English, but she completely froze because, this is the fun part, her first language for her NIF was Portuguese. She's practiced it so many times in Portuguese, even as part of a dialogue, which is something we do a lot inside the Portuguese Pro program. So she couldn't actually translate it easily back to English because she associated it so strongly with Portuguese numbers. This actually happens to me when I have to give my Portuguese mobile number in English because I literally can only think of the words in Portuguese. So start building these emotional connections today. Link feelings, sensations, and experiences directly to Portuguese words and phrases with no English required. So now let's put this all into practice with a little 30-second challenge. I want you to think about your morning routine, but only in Portuguese. Use the chunks, simple words. It's okay to make mistakes. For example, acordo às 7. Tomo café. Tomo banho. Visto-me. So the point is to really force your brain to think in Portuguese and not do a translation exercise. So pause this video right now, set a timer for 30 seconds and see if you can describe your morning in Portuguese out loud. Did you do it? How did that feel? Was it uncomfortable, a little bit clunky? That discomfort is your brain building new pathways, and that's exactly what we want to do. The more times you do it, the more well-worn that pathway is going to be, and the easier it's going to be to retrieve those Portuguese phrases. The most important thing I want you to remember, if you're still translating, it doesn't mean that you're behind, it just means that you're learning. Native level fluency takes thousands of hours of input and practice, and for adults learning part-time, especially if you're relocating or retiring to Portugal, speed is less important than consistency. So try tracking your progress by how quickly you can switch languages and not whether you're doing translation. Practice little and often, and that is how you're going to build and strengthen those new neural pathways. So if you are ready to build a strong foundation in Portuguese with realistic strategies that actually work, come along to my free 60-minute lesson for beginners. We'll cover pronunciation, essential grammar, and how to understand native speech. Basically everything that you need to know to start speaking with confidence. The link is in the description. If this video has helped you, send it to somebody else who needs to hear this that is learning Portuguese. I'm sure they will be grateful. I'll be back next week with more tips and tutorials to build your confidence and conversation skills in Portuguese, so make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss a thing. Ciao for now.